All right, welcome back to the Never Stop Getting Better podcast, where tonight's guest is guaranteed to make us all better. It's one coach, Patrick Murphy. He's the head softball coach at the University of Alabama and has been since 1999. He was inducted into the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame in 2022, the first softball coach to be honored like that. Been to 13 Women's College World Series, national champions in 2012, six-time SEC regular season champion, five-time SEC tournament champion, five-time SEC Coach of the Year, has won over 1,100 ball games at almost an 80% clip. Welcome to the show, Coach. And man, I appreciate you allowing us the opportunity.
Oh, absolutely. And thanks for the introduction. When you say all that, it's just still hard to believe. I started here as an assistant coach when the program first started in the summer of 1996. And we had nothing, no field, no players, no softballs, no uniforms, nothing. And one of the coolest things I believe in this program is I've been here from day one. 2 years as the assistant, and then the rest as the head coach. But I know every single young lady that has passed through the gates of Alabama Softball Stadium. And I just absolutely love that because we keep in great contact. I could tell you where every alum is, if she has kids, what her occupation is. And to me, that's what it's all about. And, I'm getting invited to 2 weddings in December. And
I'm sure.
I try to do my best to get to those weddings because that's the biggest day of her life. So 2 Saturdays in December before Christmas, I'll be at 2 weddings.
Sure.
And yes.
Well, you know what? That's very unique in that you were there the day it started, and really the only person to have been there. I mean, there's not many folks that can make that claim, and they darn sure can't make that claim at the University of Alabama. Like that would be unique on top of unique. Well, tell me this, take me back. I know you grew up in a little small town, and I know you finished top 10 in your class, so you was highly intelligent. But tell me about, how did you get into athletics in general? How did you get into softball more specifically?
Well, I appreciate you mentioning the class rank because there was 20 in my class. So I appreciate that. But it was a small town in Northeast Iowa called Fayette. And there was 296 kids K through 12. So it was a small school in Northeast Iowa and really nothing to do in that town except, and lucky for me, at the end of the hill where we lived was the school. So diamond, gym, the whole thing, football field, the whole thing was right there. I had to literally walk a block down the hill to get to school. And just that easy access to all those facilities with the small town, everybody had to play everything.
Right.
And, that's how you got started in sports in a small town. You just played everything because everybody needed each other as
Sure.
teammates. And, the gym was filled every Friday night for basketball. It was just one of those communities that was really cool to grow up in.
Was basketball the sport?
Um, you know, Football, you're a football coach. We had 17 kids go out. I think it was my sophomore year, and they discontinued the program. There was no way that we could do it.
Wow.
And we went to a sharing opportunity with a school right north of us, about 8 miles north, called North High of West Union. And I was the tennis team. There was one person on the tennis team. That was me.
Wow.
We had a golf team, basketball, baseball, softball, all the other sports, but we just did not have enough kids for football. And, it was too bad because that was a huge thing on a Friday night in a small town.
Sure. Well, take me through college. I know you coached baseball for a year, in high school, and then I guess ended up at ULL, for a little while. How did you find your way into women's sports? How did you find your way into softball?
Well, when I went to school at Northern Iowa, The head softball coach was in the Hall of Fame. Her name was Meredith Bakley, and I was in sports information. My work study for you and I was taking stats and doing the programs and media guides for different sports. And my junior year, they gave me the sport of softball as the SID. So I did everything for them, stats, press releases, the whole thing, and just fell in love with it. And then when I went to grad school at Louisiana Lafayette, at the time it was Southwestern Louisiana, in
Right.
Lafayette, Louisiana, I get down there to be the graduate assistant SID. They gave me a really good package, paid for school, gave me a stipend, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is huge. And the right when I got there, the assistant coach for softball resigned, and the head coach had found out that I had coached high school baseball in Iowa for one season. We play softball and baseball in Iowa in the summer,
Right.
and we just got done with it. We had a really good team, and she took me to eat pizza and said, "Hey, at the end of the interview, which I really didn't know that was an interview, how about another duty?" And I said, "Sure. What is it?" And she said, "My assistant coach, part-time, no benefits, $6,000." And I said, "Hell yes, that's a lot of money." And I was lucky enough, that was my mentor. When you look back on your career, and I'm sure you could do the same thing, there's always the one person that either gives you the chance, that pushes you in the right direction, that gives you the motivation, that gives you the confidence, that gives you the self-esteem. And my one was Yvette Gerard. She was a local Cajun lady. She had graduated from Louisiana Lafayette. She played volleyball. They didn't have softball, but she was probably the hardest worker I'd ever met. Would not take no for an answer in anything. So she raised money like she was nobody's business. And at the time, she was a great entrepreneur, a marketing person, and it was the best role model I could have had as a first-time assistant coach. And
Wow.
she was the national coach of the year twice in my 5 years there. We went to the World Series for the first time, and she's retired, lives in Baton Rouge now, but we still stay in contact. But she was the one for me that got me going in Division I athletics.
Isn't that crazy how, one of my favorite books that I've read this year is The Power of One More by Ed Milet, right? I mean, fabulous book. Well, like in that scenario, like that's the one more, like if she don't reach out to you and y'all don't go eat that day and she don't offer you that job, you are probably not sitting where you're sitting today, like that happen chance that she threw out there, changed the course of your life. And that's the great thing about, this life we live in, man. You never know, like you never know when one thing's gonna change your life, so that's absolutely awesome.
Yes, exactly. And hopefully everybody out there listening, if we were to say who was your one, immediately snapping a finger, you could figure out who that was.
No
And
doubt about it.
and for me, it was Yvette Gerard, and she was at the right spot at the right time. And I needed direction. I needed a push. I needed the motivation. I needed the confidence. She was a hell of a confidence giver. I mean, she could pump somebody's tire like nobody's business. And even though she didn't realize that, she did. And, thank God for her. Her whole family adopted me. If you've ever been in Louisiana Lafayette, it is a wild and crazy time, but the best people on earth, friendly. They will feed you. They will put clothes on your back if you need it. And they basically adopted me for the 5 years I was there. And
Right.
it's a great city and a great opportunity.
Well, I'm going to share a quick story, and I've said this on here before. I was coaching at my alma mater high school, and I spent 6 years there as an assistant coach, and then was kind of showed the door and issued out, and was one of the toughest days in my life to be married, fired, and have to go home and tell the wife that that I was let go today, and knowing we had a 1-2-year-old at the house, extremely tough day. But because of that, I bounced into the life of, I was hired. My next job up was a guy named Bobby Hall, who is one of the winningest coaches in the history of Mississippi high school football. That's who I got a job with. So because of, what was worst day of my life at the time turned into the thing that I'm most grateful for today. Because without Bobby Hall and the influence he had, man, like none of this happens for me. None of it, and that's, you just don't know where that one person comes from, who that one person's going to be, when's that one opportunity. So that, I think that's absolutely awesome. Well, then how do you end up from there? How do you end up from, I want to say ULL because I don't really know him as the other. And I have been down there because Bobby Hall's son, Will Hall, who is the head coach at Southern Miss right now, spent a little time down there at ULL as the offensive coordinator. So I've been down there to visit him while he was there. How did you end up at Alabama?
Well, after I was at Louisiana Lafayette, the SEC started softball. South Carolina had already had it for several years, so they were kind of an established program, but everybody else started at the same time in 1997. So I threw my resume out to all the teams, and the only one I heard back from was Alabama, and they had hired a gentleman to be the head coach, and he was looking for 2 assistants, and we were the last staff hired of all the schools in the SEC. And so we were really, really behind recruiting, and I'd never been to Tuscaloosa. I'd never visited the campus, but they flew me down. And this is a true story. I'm checking into the hotel on campus, and you'll know the significance of this because you're a football guy. And there's a line to check into the hotel, and it's a hotel on campus. So it was kind of cool because I was like, wow, this is pretty neat. And there was a gentleman at the front desk that was checking out, and it was late April. And he had an entourage like you wouldn't believe. And at the time, I didn't even know what the hell an entourage was, but he had one. Golf clubs, suitcases, the whole thing. And he was talking and talking. And, when you hear a voice, you're like, God, I know that person. And I could not put a face to the voice. And he finally said to the lady at the desk, hey, I'll see you in the fall. And he picks up the golf clubs and he turns around, and it was Joe Namath.
Wow.
I said to the guy that was checking me in, I said, I'll work for free. Just give me the job. I'll do it for free. And he starts to laugh and he goes, oh, that's nothing. You'll see bigger than that. I was like, bigger than Joe Namath? Come on, dude.
Yeah, really. Bear Bron's going to come back.
Exactly. So that day I was introduced to Roll Tide culture, and it was just unbelievable. The rest of the whole interview was great. The people were great. You knew something was about to be built that was really, really good. And there's no way that I could have said no to them. And,
sure.
That gentleman that took me around that day, his name is John Gilbert, and he is the AD at East Carolina. And he was also one of those guys that really, really helped me through my career when I first started at Alabama. Right. To this day, a really good day. And, going back to your point of, some negativity, and then you bounce back. You have resiliency, you have grit, and I'm proud of you for that. But one of the things that we have tried with our team the last 12 months or so, and I don't know if you've heard me tell this, but when Mike Leach passed away, the head coach of Mississippi State football, there was an outpouring of just love for him. I mean, unbelievable.
For sure.
After he had died, I stayed on Twitter for 3 hours one night, just reading all these comments. And a lot of them were like football coaches like you that had met him in a clinic. And
sure.
He spent all this time with this football coach from small town Iowa, whatever. And I sat there reading all these great comments and what a good guy he was. But you know what? He never got to see any of those because he had passed away. And so when I got back to school, in January this past year, I made a point that I was going to affirm the positive behavior of anybody I saw. If it was the gas guy at a gas station, or if it was the Publix checkout lady at my grocery store, or if it was the usher at my Catholic church, I was going to point him out. And, one of the tenets of our program is this saying: can you handle 30 seconds of embarrassment for a lifetime of learning?
Wow.
I hope you can, right?
No doubt about it.
because sometimes those interactions with maybe a stranger, or I don't know, it might feel a little uncomfortable. Like, is he serious with me right now? He's giving me this affirmation. Is he serious, or is he pulling my leg?
Yep.
You know, and then after about 30 seconds, the other person realizes he's telling the truth. This is a good thing.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden you see their whole demeanor switch. Like they bow up and they're like, heck yeah.
Yeah.
So anytime you can affirm someone that you come across, and coaches, if you're listening to this, start affirming everybody on your team, your staff, your athletic trainer, anybody in your organization. If when they do something good, let them know it. Because if you don't say it, they don't know it.
I absolutely love that. And I'm sitting here thinking how, you know, I don't personally do a good enough job of that in some aspects because I have 10 or 12 coaches that I don't tell enough. And I do intentionally tell them, but, I just don't. But tell you what I try to do, and I learned this from, Brian Kite several years ago, that if I'm checking out at the local grocery store and the lady checking me out, like I'm going to try to affirm her. If she's got purple hair, I'm going to say, sweetie, that is the most beautiful purple hair that I have ever seen in my life. And her face just lights up. And, or if I'm going through an airport, and you got those people that have to check your license. And I'm sitting there's a part of me thinking, man, how miserable a job can that be? Like, I'm going to try to lighten that day a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to try to start up a conversation and say something positive. But I love what you said. And I was a Mike Leach fan. Like, I think he just was a very unique guy that touched a lot of people and died without really knowing how many people he touched. Like there's no doubt about that.
At the end of every practice, we do something called props and own it's. So we're in the circle at home plate and they all know it's coming. And I said, okay, anybody have a prop? And a prop is you're going to affirm the behavior that you love of somebody in the circle. Yep. And one of the things that we try to get rid of or dispel in our program is jealousy or envy. Get rid of those two words in your life and you're a much happier person.
Sure.
I mean, there's no win in comparison. And it's supposed to be spelled S-O-N at the end, but I spell it S-I-N because it's a sin to compare yourself to somebody else, especially a teammate. She has Alabama across her chest. So do you. We are so happy that Montana Fouts has the A on her chest and not something else from another school. Sure. We're not jealous of her. We love her. Sure. She's one of us. So we try to get rid of the jealousy, envy right away. And I think one of the ways to do that is to start teaching how do you affirm a teammate? What do you say when you want to compliment or affirm a practice behavior or whatever it might be? And it is one of the coolest things to see. And I wish you could be here at the beginning of a career and then be here 4 years later to watch a young lady change. And Montana was one of the best. Like I would say, okay, does anybody have a prop? And I'd look around the circle and all of a sudden the hands started to go up. And I knew though, I mean, if she raised her hand, it was going to mean the difference in a young lady's life for like 2 months.
Sure.
And then when we're done with the props, and there's a lot of them, and they get really good at it. I mean, I'm just like, dang, some of them are better than me at getting a prop.
Sure.
Then I'll say, okay, do we have an own it? So the two words that we really tried to mesh together in our program last year was affirmation and accountability. Because if I'm going to affirm you, coach, in the most positive way possible, and I'm going to be genuine, you're going to end up loving me.
Sure.
So it's a lot easier when I affirm the behavior that I love in you. Maybe 2 weeks later, you know what, coach? You're not pulling your end of the load here.
Sure.
And you're going to realize that it comes from a place of love, not a place of what the hell is he talking about? Okay. Because you've been affirming you again and again and again. I have an interest in you. I've gotten to know you. I watch how you practice. I watch how you play. And then now I need to, say, okay, sure. We need a little more out of you. And it's not that big of a deal then. And it's the affirmation is much easier. The accountability, and you know this, is much harder.
No doubt.
Once they start doing it, it becomes easy. And then another thing that we say in front of everybody all the time, when everybody on the team, the staff, the coaching, everybody realizes that everybody has everybody's best interests at heart, the sky's the limit.
Sure.
When you realize that you have my best interests, Montana Fouts has my best interests, my pitching coach has my best interests, Lance McMahon, the whole thing. When a young lady realizes everybody in this room has my best interests at heart, it's not a negative. Then she turns around and says, Murph loves me. That's why he's saying this.
Right.
So when we do own it's, that's when you own maybe a negative play or whatever happened, and at the very beginning, there might be one or two, and there'll be 13 props. And then as the season goes along, it becomes 50-50. And I don't look at anybody when I say anybody want to own something. And it takes one kid to do it, to break the ice, and then it's no big deal. And it's hard to take personal responsibility because everybody wants to transfer the blame, right?
Yeah.
It's the coach's fault. It's the umpire's fault. It's the sun's fault. It's the wind's fault. It's the fans' fault. It's the facility's fault. It's the dirt's fault. It's not my fault. So when they start to own stuff, then it becomes a really good team.
Sure. Let me ask you this, 2 questions. Why do people find it so hard to accept affirmations? Like if you start affirming me, I'm going to start hawing and, oh, no, yeah. Instead of just say, thank you.
Yes.
And it drives me nuts. And I work really hard now when somebody does say something affirming because, I flip it around. I mean, all I should say is thank you.
Yes.
But why is that so hard to do, you think?
I wish I knew the answer. And I've got a buddy that does the same thing. And I'm like, dude, I'm trying to pump you up. Why do you always come back to me?
Right.
It's just like this. I don't know. It's like I'll say something to a player, and if a response is no, or really, you think?
Right.
We're taught at the very, very beginning of a career, when somebody affirms you or somebody holds you accountable, there's only 2 words, and you just said them. Thank you.
Thank you.
You'll look the person in the eye, and that's all you say. We have an activity called I Got Your Back. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but we have class dinners at coaches' houses. So at the beginning of the semester, way back in August, the seniors come over to my house. And this year we had 9. So it's a big class. And then the juniors go to assistant coach, the sophomore goes to assistant coach, and the freshmen come to my house. So at the sophomore dinner, we play a game called I Got Your Back. Everybody gets a piece of paper, and at the top of it, it says, I got your back. Okay, it's blank. We have tape, and then we have magic markers. And so everybody in the room gets this piece of paper. We tape it on the back of everybody. Then you're instructed that, let's say, I think there was 9 people in the room. So we're going to go around the room with your pen and turn people around and write on their sheet of paper an affirming quality that they have that you love about them. So it might be a sentence or 2. So they turn them around, write on their back. So there's like this train of people writing. Yep. So at the end of it, when everybody has their 9, okay, we sit down in the living room, we take it off the back, and then the person has to read out loud, one at a time, an affirmation. And then she has to guess who wrote it. And if she guesses correctly, she looks them right in the eye and says, thank you.
Wow.
And that's it. So they have to do that 9 times. And I'm telling you, there's some squirming, right?
Sure.
Because sometimes they're embarrassed. Sometimes they're like, I don't deserve that, And you're right. It's the craziest thing ever. I don't understand it. I wish I did. But that kind of helps them get going with just say thank you. Well, and it's a great activity to do.
And affirmations are great in general. Affirmations are great. I try to have our kids, have 3, 4, or 5 that they just keep on their phone that they say to themselves, like, I have for the past 10 years gotten in the shower in the morning time with my wife, getting dressed over, in her little place. And I'll tell her, babe, I cannot believe that you're actually getting dressed in the presence of the greatest coach in the state of Missouri. Like, I just can't believe that. Like, I affirm myself from time to time because, I do believe that what I believe matters, so, and I try to get our kids, man. Like, I think affirmations are huge. Real quick, give me an example of the own it, like what, you know, what are some of the things they own? Are we just talking about, eras in softball, or are we talking about attitude stuff? Are we talking about,
I'll give you two
what is own
examples.
it?
Yeah, I'll give you two examples of one that really come to mind because we just ended practice like 2 weeks ago. And there was a day where we were doing balls down the line. And the outfielder has to decide, am I going to catch it? Am I going to just keep it in front? Am I going to dive? Whatever. And there was a ball where the left fielder, she was never going to catch it. And she dove and went all the way to the wall for an inside the park home run. Okay. So usually when that happens, we stop. Everybody gathers at second base. We talk about it, good, bad, or ugly, and then we go back. So after practice, the left fielder, right away, and I was really proud of her. She goes, I'm going to own that play on the left field line. As soon as I dove, I said to myself, oh, why are you diving? You can't catch that, And then another day, we had a slapper who her job is to put the ball in play and run like the Dickens, and get somebody to throw it away. And she was popping up way too much. And she owned her first round of batting practice. She says, I was not intentional enough keeping my barrel above the ball.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was, and we teach them how to do it. So it's very specific, to the point. You don't beat around the bush, you don't hem and haw. It should be something very specific that you need to own. And then the same way with the affirmation, direct, to the point, one sentence, I love, and then do it. And it's so cool to see, because every now and then we'll have a guest to practice, and if they're near the field, I always yell at them and say, come into the circle. And they walk away going like, what did I just witness?
That is awesome.
Yes. And then I'll say to the guest, do you have anybody that you want to affirm after? And they always do, because they watch the whole practice.
Wow.
And they'll say something, to a player, and she'll be sky high because this new person at practice noticed it.
Right.
So it's
absolutely awesome. Well, that I will take with me, I can assure you, because it sounds like a little thing, but what a great activity. What a great activity to teach them life, how to take ownership, which I think is one of the hardest things in the world for young people to do today. Like it's hard to do, and then how to affirm other people is fantastic. And for those of you listening, if you don't know, Alabama softball is known for several things, but one of the things that it's known for besides winning is the culture of the program. The culture of the program is absolutely awesome. Like it is. And I'm gonna tell you, one of the best things I've ever watched, and I want you to talk about this because I think this is super hard, and this defines culture to me. I've always said culture is what a group believes, how they behave, and the experiences that they give off to other people. Well, I pull up this YouTube video from the, when you're in the mastermind, you gave it out, The Anatomy of a Teammate. And I watched The Anatomy of a Teammate, and you'll have to coach me through the story. But what I know is the All-American gets replaced at bat in a big game, down maybe 2-0 by a freshman. And it is, I don't know how that happens, because I'm going to be honest with you, Pat. If I'm replaced, I can't see myself going to the dugout and cheering for the person who took my job. But there was no faking it. There's a split screen, right? And as the ball's being hit over the left field wall, the one who was replaced is extremely excited, and there's no faking it. The Anatomy of a Teammate, man. Tell me about that story, and tell me how that comes to be, because that's not an accident. That don't just happen. That's intentional. That's what you've done with that program, to have the young ladies in that program be as happy for somebody else's success as their own. That don't happen by chance, and that's not easy.
Hell, you could tell the story. You got everything right. Everything you said was perfect. Number one, you said genuine like 3 times. That's the key. Okay, so when I was in school at Northern Iowa, I graduated from UNI. I was a teaching history education major. And one of my classes as a junior was Foundations of Teaching. And it was by Dr. Len Froyen. He still goes to church at the Catholic Student Center on the campus of Northern Iowa. And I see him when I go home, and retired now. But I remember the first week of this class, he said this, and it has stayed with me. I don't know how long ago that is, but it's a long time. First graders know when their teacher is fake. First graders. So I sat there. I was like, first graders? Are you kidding me? There's no way. First graders can tell when their teacher is faking it. So when I introduced the philosophy of Mudita, which you've just described perfectly, as having vicarious joy in someone else's success. So for years, when I was starting at Alabama, I would say that over and over and over. If you can be as happy for a teammate's success as if you did it yourself, we're going to be fine. No jealousy, no jealousy. So we would say it. I mean, we would say it nonstop. And that was 2009. The story was perfect. We were down 2-0, 4th inning, bases loaded, 2 outs, and Brittany Rogers was the 4-time All-American up to bat. And you know, as a coach, you get this gut feeling that another player can do something good. And there was a girl on the bench named Jazz Lunsford, who was a freshman from County High School in Northport, Alabama, where I'm right here tonight, 5 minutes down the road from my house, 15 minutes from the campus of the University of Alabama. Hadn't gotten a hit in a game since April, which a reporter told me afterwards. And thank God I didn't know it, because I might not have hit a pinch hit for her. But she worked her ass off nonstop, before practice, after practice. You know, when May comes around, we're done with school. So they become professional softball players. And she was at the cages after practice, before practice, in between practice. I mean, she was always there. And the guy that throws batting practice is me. So I see how everybody's hitting, and I see their body language, and I see, you know, if they're feeling good, right? Well, Jazz Lunsford was killing it. So I go over to the dugout and I say, hey, Jazz, get a helmet. You're going to bat for Brittany. And she's a freshman and she's clueless, which is also good, right?
Sure.
There's 12,000 people. We're on ESPN2. You know, it's a big deal. Not to her. So she goes to get her batting helmet. She gets her bat and her batting gloves and all that stuff. And then the next person I have to go see is Brittany Rogers, who's already in the on-deck circle. So I go over to her. I literally put my hands on her shoulders and I said, hey, Jazz is going to hit for you. Go tell her she can do it. That was it. You know what she said to me? Yes, sir. Not a smirk, not a attitude, not a roll of the eyes, not a, what the hell are you doing? I'm the 4-time All-American here. She's a freshman. She doesn't play. None of that. All she said was, yes, sir. She goes straight into the dugout. She grabs Jazz by the shoulders and starts pumping her up. You can do this.
Wow.
You got this. So, and you know, when a senior 4-time All-American gets pitch hit by a freshman, and you just said it yourself, I don't know if I could have done that. Well, what's the freshman thinking right now? She's thinking that Brittany hates me.
Sure.
She's pissed at me because I'm hitting for her. That's what she's thinking. And when Brittany goes over to her and says, Jazz, you got this, guess what? All of those feelings went out the door. And now when Jazz goes up the steps to hit in the World Series with the bases loaded and 2 outs, she's okay. She's like, Brittany's okay with it. She's okay with it. I can do this. And on like the 8th or 9th pitch of the at-bat, she hit an opposite field grand slam, and we win the game. And I'm getting goosebumps right now talking about it.
Sure.
It's still to this day just an incredible moment. It was, and like you said, all those things on TV are captured in this YouTube video called Anatomy of a Teammate. And at the time, we don't know any of that stuff's going on because we're trying to win the game. And luckily for all of us, really, there was a coach of a Georgia high school softball team that was a buddy of mine. And after the game, or if the World Series was over, he called me and said, "Hey, Murph, do you have the video of the Arizona State game?" And after, way back then, everybody got a DVD copy of the game from ESPN. And as you left the stadium, you got the DVD. So I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Would you send it to me?" And I said, "Sure." He said, "I'll send it back. I'll send it back." So 2 months later, I'm sitting in my office, package arrives. There's 2 DVDs in it. One, the original of the game, and two, the second one that's in this envelope. It says, and he's written in cursive, Anatomy of a Teammate. And I was like, what the heck is this? So I stick it in my computer, and within 3 minutes, I'm about to cry.
Sure.
He has captured everything from that moment on the goodness of being a good teammate, which was Brittany Rogers. And if I would have known what Mudita was right then, that's how it started with us. It wasn't until 2012 where I was reading a book over Christmas break, and the chapter started having vicarious joy in someone else's success. In other words, Mudita.
Yep.
I was like, holy buckets, there's a word for what we're trying to get our kids to act and feel like. And it was Mudita. And if everybody that's listening to this could see this, I have a tattoo that I got in April on my left shoulder that says Mudita. We had an alumni a reunion, and I kind of got persuaded to go to the tattoo parlor with all the alums. And there was one young lady in particular who's very persuasive, Amanda Locke, who played for us as a national champion from Mesquite, Texas. She kind of shoves me into the room, and I in the chair, and the lady goes, "Well, what are we doing?" I was like, "I have no idea." And I said, "You know what? How about the word Mudita?" And she says, "Well, what is that? How do you spell it? And what does it mean?" And I told her the whole story. And the tattoo artist was a great lady. And she goes, "I might start to cry." And she said, "I got a 12-year-old boy at home. I'm going to teach him when I get home what that word is." And that has, when I speak to coaches groups everywhere, that's the number one topic they want me to speak on. And then the number two thing is that situation in the College World Series in 2009. How does Brittany Rogers act like she does? And there's no jealousy. It was genuine, and the love for each other was right there. Everybody saw it on TV.
Sure.
That play. And really, Coach, that's the reason why we have won for 27 years. That word, Mudita. It's not because we have 5-star players. I've got 2 stars to 5 stars, but they play for each other. And when I go to mass, when I go to the grocery store, everybody will come up to me, and I know what they're going to say before they say it. And the conversation goes like this: "Do you know why we love watching your team play?" And I always want to say, "Yes, I know what you're going to tell me," but I say, "Why?" And they always say, "Because it looks like they're having fun and they love each other."
Mm.
And if you're going to spend money to watch a team play, you don't want to go watch Debbie the Downer, especially if you're putting $10 down to watch a game. You want to watch somebody having fun, right? Because there's enough trouble in the world. When you go to a game, you want to get away from all your issues. So it is the number one reason why we win.
Well, it's a phenomenal video, and I want everybody that listens to, pull it up, Anatomy of a Teammate, and it is absolutely awesome. It's something that I show to my team, because when we can have selfless players, we have a chance. Like it's not about the star ratings. I mean, it's about relationships, it's about communication, it's about the human element, and you have been really awesome at that. Let me ask you this, and this is, let's fast forward. let's fast forward to the transfer portal. Has the ability to build and maintain a culture changed with the transfer portal? Has that added has that added another level of something that's a little difficult?
Well, you know what? It's kind of a strange byproduct of it. And what it has caused us to do is to be even more intentional about who we are. Because like this year, we had a young lady from Central Arkansas who's a grad transfer. We get her for 1 year. So that has caused us is like, we have to teach her in 1 year what we have taught Montana Fouts in 4.
Right.
So I have to really do a better job of explaining this is what we're about in a shortened amount of time, right?
Sure.
So I think it's actually helped us continue what we're all about, because there's been some years where, nobody leaves and nobody comes in.
Sure.
And then it kind of maybe gets a little, taken for granted.
Right.
But now when you have, we got a young lady that's a catcher from Texas A&M and a pitcher from LSU and a outfielder from Sanford and a junior college kid from DMAC from Des Moines Area Community College in Iowa, and 2 freshmen. So 7 newbies. And I want them to know what Alabama softball is all about. So
Sure.
we got to get after it. And it has helped me tell the story of our program better. I have to be more precise. I have to be more to the point. I have to be intentional about everything we talk about so they get it. And I really want, I probably said that to the group a couple of years ago during COVID, but, I've said to our ladies every single year, some kids get it right away. Some kids it may take a year or 2. Some kids might get it after they graduate.
Sure.
And some might get it 10 years after, but they will get it. And as a coaches, we have to realize that we're the adult. They are the kids. Everybody's got a different runway. Some kids might need a longer runway to take off. We need to be patient with them. Okay. So they will get it. And you will probably get a text, a call, an email, or a letter one day from kids that you never, ever thought that you'd get a letter from. And it's going to say, Coach, you know what? I get it. And I appreciate everything you taught me.
No doubt.
And then you realize that's why you were a coach.
Sure. I mean, we're planting seeds, on bad days, there's seeds being planted, and, when they sprout, that's a tricky question. You know what I'm saying? Well, let me ask you this, because I've kind of gotten into this, and, here with our program, and I've kind of went through and gotten certified as a mental performance coach through the Brian Kane stuff, because I just, I feel like that's something, an edge that we can get in our program. And I had on here a couple of weeks ago, I had a young lady, Ellie Cooper, who is the mental performance coach for Florida State softball. Like, they have hired her to come in and be, like that person. What do y'all do, with mental performance? Like, how do you address that? How do you teach it, coach it? Is it a big part, small part? Is it, like what does mental performance mean to you or to, Alabama softball?
Well, I think number one, it starts in the weight room with our strength coach, Michelle Diltz, because mental toughness is persevering through something that's very, very difficult.
Sure.
Right? You don't need mental toughness when you're 4 for 4 or you're 8 for 8. You're flying high.
Right.
You need it when the shit hits the fan, right?
No doubt.
And usually the number one spot early in a career, and I love being a spring sport because we get the whole fall to get them ready. And Michelle Diltz is one of the best in the country. She's a master strength coach, and one of under 20 women, I think, that's a master strength coach. And her whole thing is teaching them mental toughness. So now, above and beyond that, Alabama, we have so many resources. We have outside counseling. They can go see any counselor that they want. We have a sports psychologist that comes to campus every Wednesday anytime that he's in town, they make an appointment. They have time slots. He will FaceTime them if they need him, during the season. It is basically anything and everything that they want. Then I bring in speakers. I call it SOS, Speakers on Success. And they come and talk to the team. It's usually about once a month. And it varies from sports to business to medicine. It doesn't matter, lawyers, whatever. They talk about their career path, their educational path, things that they wish they would have done, things that they glad they really did. And they give the girls a snapshot of their career and what is possible. And almost all of that is, they always mention grit, resiliency, attitude, and it just builds right into what we're talking about. Sure. So it is, and I think the biggest attribute that you can have for a baseball or softball player is the ability to bounce back after failure. That's it.
No doubt.
You can be a hitter, a good hitter, if you can embrace failure, because it's going to happen.
A lot.
Yeah. 7 out of 10. If you can talk yourself into being a good hitter those 7 times, you'll be fine.
Sure.
But it's the kids that cannot handle the failure that do not do well at higher levels.
I heard this the other day. Winners lose more than losers lose. Like winners lose and keep trying, and keep playing and keep going up to bat and keep working. You know what I'm saying? Losers quit and move on about their business. So that is 100% true. Let me ask you this. Being at Alabama 25, 20,
I guess 28.
20 what?
28 this year.
Okay, 28. How do you personally combat complacency? And, second part, how do you continue to get better?
Well, I think especially in the SEC, any Division 1, 2, 3, JUCO, high school, it doesn't matter. If you're doing something well, somebody else wants to beat you, right?
Amen.
So you have to continually improve and reinvent yourself, because in the SEC, your butt's going to get run over if you think you've arrived. Okay. And one of the silliest things that I do, like when I have my GPS on, and at the end of the route, the lady on the GPS always says, "You have arrived." And I scream back to her, "No, I haven't. You're full of it." And if you feel like you've arrived, that's when people are going to run you over. And we had 2 coaching changes. Last year, our pitching coach took a head job. This year, my associate head coach retired to go home and take care of her mom. So that was 2 big hires for us. And my associate head coach had been with me for 25 years.
Wow.
That's unheard of, right?
Sure.
So last year, we hired a new pitching coach. He's been just smooth, and transition has been great. And this fall, the first day of fall ball practice, one of my former players, Kayla Bro, came back, took the job. And in a weird way, it rejuvenated me. We hired we got the 3rd assistant for softball and baseball, So a gentleman named Adam Arbor took that spot. And it's just become like this energizing thing. And they bring different ideas. One thing I might have told the group that I spoke with you guys a couple of years ago, that I always tried to do before COVID, was in the summer, go to a conference that has nothing to do with sports, but has everything to do with the success of a student athlete later on in life. So I would Google, starting in February, I'm big on servant leadership. Okay. Instead of saying, "Coach, what are you going to do for me?" You turn it around and you say, "What can I do for you today? I'm going to serve you." So I would just type in servant leadership conference, and it took me everywhere. And I learned some of the best things that I still have to this day on some of those conferences. And one of them was called Capturing Kids' Hearts. And it's big in Iowa, it's big in Texas. And I have a cousin that's a elementary school teacher for like 40 years in a small town in Iowa. And she said, "Patrick, you need to go to this conference. It's right up your alley." And so I looked it up and I went to it. And that was probably 23 years ago. And to this day, I still use a lot of those things. Wow. And one of them is the I Got Your Back activity.
Yep.
And it was for teachers. And there was 59 elementary, high school, and junior high teachers, and me.
Mm.
And it was terrific. So if you can get out, go to a conference, go to some sort of convention, whatever, you're going to get better. And that's what I've tried to do year after year after year. And and one of the other themes in our program is when you fully buy in and believe that the best is yet to come, it will be. The best is yet to come for
Wow.
everybody. And you just got to believe it. And you know, one of the hardest things for a softball student athlete to come to grips with is that final game at the World Series when it's done. Because a lot of them, they've been playing since they were 5 years old. And in a blink of an eye, it's over. And it just comes, I mean, it is a hard thing. So we try to prepare them that softball in college, they're writing about a 85, 90 chapter book because women outlive men by 12 years.
That's right.
Sorry. Yeah.
That's
So
right.
we're on the short end of that stick, right?
Sure.
So they have a hell of a long time to live, and the best is yet to come. And when you're a coach, they're going to be a person a hell of a lot longer than they will be an athlete. I want them to be a great person for 70 years after they're done with us at Alabama. So the softball part of it, just a small speck in their life.
Yeah, but you know, and it's awesome that you know you help them and communicate that to them because you know I've seen so many kids' identity be wrapped around what they're actually doing and the sport they're playing, and when that sport is gone, just be lost, you know, just absolutely lost and not know what they are, you know. And I think that's, you know, something that we spend a great deal of time too talking about. We just play football, man. This ain't who we are, you know, like we've got to be something bigger than that, you know, and that is something that you can learn. And I know, you know, and I know y'all use classroom time to push the culture thing. Like what does classroom time look like for you all? And I'm sure y'all have a classroom.
Yes. And softball is what you do. It's not who you are, just like you said.
Sure.
So we have a 24 chairs in the classroom. We have a projector, computer, you know, a screen. We have 3 huge whiteboards on 3 of the walls. So there's a lot of collaboration going on, um, thinking out loud, you know, all of those things. We want it to feel like they can say anything they want in that room. And so we'll watch YouTube videos. We'll have speakers in there. When the athletic director comes, that's where we meet. We have pregame, we have postgame, we have video, the whole thing in that classroom. And you know, like I'll give you an example. A couple of weeks ago, NIL is big now. Well, a lot of kids don't want to go out there and say, "Hey, this is my resume. This is here's my followers on social media, and I'd really like to XYZ," because that fear of rejection,
Sure.
it's just it kills people. So there's a really good TED talk by a young man that's called 100 Days of Rejection. And he is very lovable. And you like the kid right away. And he's Chinese American and he's got a great accent. And he had a bad experience when he was 6 years old. And he still remembered at the age of 30. And he would not let himself be put out there. He would not do it because it was fear of rejection. Somebody wouldn't like me. Somebody would tell me no. So he decided to do this 100 days of rejection to practice feeling okay about it. And it is hilarious. I don't know if you've watched it.
I've actually seen it.
I mean, it's one of my favorites. So we showed it to the team. A week later, one of the freshmen come up to me in the clubhouse and she says, "Hey, Murph, remember that video that you showed, you know, last week about rejection?" I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "Well, I put it to test. There's a store in town that I really like. I'm there all the time. It's called, it's like a vintage clothing shop." So she went in with a resume and asked, you know, if they would do an NIL deal with her. And they said yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's like, you know, it's proud dad moment. She watched the video. She put it to the test. whether they say yes or no, she did it. And I was really, really proud of her. And this is a freshman.
Sure.
So it was a good learning moment for everybody. And I'm telling that story, I think, for the rest of my career, because it worked out. But if it hadn't, she still put herself out there. No big deal. You know, what's the worst thing could happen? They say no. You have exactly what you had before you went in there.
No doubt about it. But it absolutely paralyzes people, you know, like the fear of the no. And, you know, we do a little, you know, fundraiser where we sell raffle tickets. And I always tell the parents, man, make the kids sell them. Like, make them go door to door and pray to God that they get a bunch of no's, because that's the best thing that could happen to them. You know, like, to learn that no is just not yet. You know what I mean? Like, it's not really no, it's just not yet. You know, if I'd
Yep.
taken no, my wife wouldn't be my wife. You know, like, I had to ask 5 times, but persistence can pay off. You know what I mean?
Well, and it translates to the field though as well, because if you have a team that's afraid to make a mistake, well, guess what? They're not going to be very good.
No doubt.
They're going to be looking over their shoulder the entire time.
No doubt.
So if you can overcome the fear of rejection, you can overcome the fear of failure.
No doubt about it. And you know, something that I've had to learn the hard way is, you know, and through the mental performance stuff, is to not make a fearful player, you know, like, not treat that person in such a way that, you know, they are fearful to make a mistake, right? Because that's not going to make them a better player, you know, like,
Wow.
that's not the way to do it. All right, as we get near, I know I've taken up a lot of your time, man. I super appreciate it. Give me a couple of, you know, like, couple of your favorite books, podcasts, you know, like, things you watch on YouTube. Are there certain, you know, do you have go-tos for, you know, just to help you continue to grow, continue to learn, continue to be better?
Well, one of my favorite books has nothing to do with athletics, sports. It's called The Choice. And I found it maybe 2018. And it's Edith
Yep.
Eva Eger. And she's 14 years old. Her and her twin and her family are marching to Auschwitz. And it is heavy at times, but it is also so enlightening. I mean, it's one of the best books I've ever read, and I recommend it to everybody. And to a person, they have always said, wow,
Sure.
absolutely gold. So that's a book. One of my favorite podcasts, and I listened to it this morning when I was walking in the neighborhood. It's called Change Starts Here, and it's Franklin Covey, and it's basically everything education. And it's some of my favorite listening, superintendents, principals, curriculum people. They have great stuff. And this morning it was a gentleman that I found through COVID, Joe Sanfilippo, and he was the superintendent of a award-winning high school in a small town in Wisconsin. And I actually just love the guy. He retired this past year, but he had this 1-minute leadership lesson walk to work. And it was such a small town that his house was a 1-minute walk to his office.
Wow.
So he would have his phone on a selfie stick and videotape himself and talk about a leadership lesson. And most of the time he was in a parka and stocking cap and freezing his butt off on his walk to work. But he just has great stuff. And he was the guest on that podcast this morning, and it brought back really good memories because of COVID, I guess that's how I found him, and now we're pretty
Sure.
good friends. So that would be one. Um, Another book is definitely I would either have your student athletes, and if you haven't read it, I would read it. It's called The 4 Agreements, and it's 4 agreements that you make with yourself. And I did it one year with our seniors, and they all said to a T, "Why didn't you do this as a freshman?"
Wow.
And so now we do it with the freshmen. And it's just 4 simple things that you agree with yourself. Um, don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions. always do your best, and be impeccable with your word. 4 easy to say, but very difficult things to do.
Right.
And, don't make assumptions. Don't take anything personally. And as a young person, those 2 things are,
Whew.
yes, very hard.
No doubt.
And they do get better at it, though.
Sure.
It's a quick read. It's about 120 pages, one of the smaller books, but it is life-changing.
Yeah, I have read that. I've actually read that a couple times. And I've listened to The Choice. I kind of found that book my favorite of all time, honestly, was Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Well, The Choice is kind of in that
Yes.
life-changing realm of it will change your life. If you read it or listen to it, there'll be things that will stick with you for a long time. Because sometimes we think we got it bad, and anytime I think I have it bad, I think about Viktor Frankl and I'm like, I don't have it that bad.
No, sir. Gosh, that's a really good correlation for sure.
No doubt about it. Well, Patrick, man, I sure appreciate you taking the time. You have made me better. You're going to make a lot of other people better. And I'm going to have, I'm going to put in the show notes all the recommendations on the books, the anatomy of a teammate. I'm going to put all that out there for the people that listen, because I know our listeners are people that are into books, into podcasts, into trying to get better, just like we are. So, man, I'm very thankful for you taking the opportunity to come on tonight.
Well, thanks for the invitation, and I'm glad we hooked up a couple years ago. And if there's anything I can do for you or any of your listeners, just let me know.
Yes, sir. I'm a big fan, and I'm a big Alabama fan, although I grew up in Mississippi. I have been to the Alabama football coaching clinic probably every year for the past 15,
Oh,
like I absolutely love it, man. They've always done a fantastic job. And how can you not be a fan of Nick Saban when you want to talk about not becoming complacent and not and striving to be the best, like he's pretty open in that category, you know what I'm saying? Like it's pretty evident that he's built a little different. So maybe, man, I can get over there and send me a softball game and meet you in person one day soon.
yes, sir. Always
Well,
welcome.
yes, sir. Well, I appreciate everybody for listening. If you like it, share it with a friend, rate it, reach out to me. I can help if I can help you in any way, man. I always will. Until next time, adios, amigos.